La Mer restaurant glowed honey gold beneath chandeliers that dripped light like molten crystal. The entire space shimmered with a cultivated elegance. Glossy mahogany tables, velvet upholstered chairs, wine bottles glowing amber in glass racks. A quartet of violinists tucked into the far alcove wove a thread of music through the air, their bows drawing out long notes that melted into the low murmur of conversation. The kind of place where power was performed as much as the food was served. At a corner table, however, something disrupted the rhythm of refinement. 3 men in black suits pressed close around a woman in a beige coat. She had the nervous look of someone who realized she'd walked into a trap. Her eyes darted toward the exit, then to the floor, then back to men, flickering like a candle about to be snuffed. The biggest of the 3 leaned in with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. He pulled out a chair as if offering politeness, though the edge in his movement spoke of ownership rather than courtesy. "Let's have a private conversation," he murmured, jerking his head toward the bar. The woman's hands remained flat against the table. Her knuckles had gone white, her lips pale. A ripple of awareness touched only one other person in the restaurant. From across the dining room, a man in a worn work jacket stepped forward. His boots carried scuffs, and his wrist bore a loop of red thread. He didn't belong among the tailored suits and silk dresses, but he moved with unhurried calm. In his hand, he carried nothing more threatening than a cracked porcelain spoon he'd picked up from the bar. He placed it gently on the corner of the men's table. His voice, quiet but cutting clear, carried just enough weight to slice through the surrounding hum. "Wrong table. Wrong day, gentlemen." For a half-breath, the entire restaurant froze. Forks hovered. Glasses paused mid-lift. Even the violin seemed to stretch one note too long. The big man's smile collapsed into a snarl. "Who the hell are you?" The stranger's answer was steady. "A father." He twisted the cracked spoon in his fingers, catching the chandelier light across its fractured surface. And then everything exploded. Evan Hale wasn't supposed to be there. At 35, Evan Hale lived in the margins of other people's lives, the places where things broke and needed fixing. He was no executive, no celebrity, no man of renown. He was a single dad, an industrial maintenance technician. He was a guy restaurants and hotels called after hours when their gas sensors failed, their automatic doors jammed, or their kitchen equipment refused to cooperate. The invisible man behind smooth operations. Most people overlooked him. He was background, a uniform that faded against the shine of higher-paying clientele. But for his daughter Lily, he was everything. Every morning, 7-year-old Lily performed the same ritual. She folded a paper crane and tucked it into his work jacket pocket. "For safe travels, Daddy." Then she tied a red thread around his wrist. "So, you remember to breathe slow when things get scary." That thread was there now, soft cotton brushing his pulse. He hadn't come to La Mer as a guest, but as a worker, clipboard in hand, maintenance orders clipped neatly to its face. The restaurant's manager had asked him to finalize the kitchen repair schedule for tomorrow, and Lily, as always, had come along. She sat at a small table near the emergency exit, folding napkins into cranes while he did paperwork. A history of broken things. His wife, Sarah, had been gone 3 years. She died in a boarding house fire. Cheap wiring, no working sprinklers, a death caused not by fate, but by the greed of a real estate company cutting corners to squeeze profit from desperate tenants. Since then, Evan had trained himself to see danger in overlooked details. That night, while discussing schedules, his trained eye caught 2 problems instantly. The sprinkler head above the flambe station was caked with grease, useless in a real fire. The emergency exit door near Lily stuck when it closed. He could hear the jamming mechanism from 20 feet away. Without thinking, he pulled out his phone, snapped photos, and noted the issues. Habits like these had saved restaurants from health department fines more times than he could count. But his caution came from a deeper place, one carved by grief. Maintenance areas through the back. The maitre d' sniffed when he saw Evan's oil-stained jacket. "The bar is for paying customers." Evan nodded. He was used to it. Men in $1,000 suits rarely looked twice at the guy with tools. But then something else caught his attention. Something more dangerous than a clogged sprinkler. Wrong table, wrong men. At table 12, three men in black suits had quietly repositioned themselves. Their movements weren't casual. They were coordinated. They'd chosen angles that blocked the restaurant security cameras. The biggest of them wore a wireless earpiece in only one ear. His left sleeve bulged with the outline of something too solid, too heavy to be a phone. The woman in the beige coat was trying not to cry. Her hands pressed flat to the table, like she was bracing herself to run, though she had nowhere to go. Evan recognized the choreography instantly. Subtle hand signals, blocked exits, controlled territory. She wasn't dining with them. She was cornered. Across the room, Lily looked up from her napkin cranes and met his eyes. She pressed both palms flat against her table, their private signal. "I'm watching you, Daddy." The red thread around his wrist pulsed. He palmed the cracked spoon from a bar, its fracture a small reminder. Fragile things, held properly, could still serve. And then he rose. The restaurant hummed with an oblivious rhythm. Silverware clinked. Wine glasses tilted. The violins played on. Everyone minded their own business. Everyone except Evan. He walked toward table 12. The tension at table 12 could be cut with a knife. "She doesn't want to talk," Evan said softly, placing himself between the woman and the largest man. His tone was steady, not raised, but it carried like steel hidden beneath cloth. The big man laughed, low and jagged. "Back off. Who are you supposed to be in this fancy place?" "Kitchen repair guy," one of the companions sneered, gesturing at Evan's work jacket. Diners nearby smirked at the obvious mismatch. Grease-stained uniform versus sharp suits and polished shoes. The woman's voice trembled. "I don't know them." Her name tag, barely visible beneath her coat, read, N. Lin. Evan angled the cracked spoon, using it as a makeshift mirror. In its reflection, he caught the third man sliding to block the secondary exit near the restrooms. Perfect choreography. 3 points of control around one frightened woman. The restaurant manager appeared at Evan's shoulder, his smile brittle. "Sir, please. Maintain decorum. These are VIP guests." Something about him was wrong. His watch had recently been switched wrists. The tan line gave it away. Fresh ink stains marked his cuff, as if he'd signed papers only moments earlier. Someone had gotten to him. Evan raised his voice just enough for nearby tables to hear. "The lady said she doesn't know you, and I noticed you've arranged yourselves to block cameras." A woman at the next table had her phone angled discreetly. "Oh my God," she whispered to her live stream audience. "Some maintenance guy thinks he's a hero." Nervous laughter rippled across the dining room. The big man's hand clamped heavy on Evan's shoulder. Smart men walk away. The red thread on Evan's wrist caught the light. Lily's reminder, breathe slow when it's scary. "The lady said no," he repeated calmly. "And the cameras you're blocking will prove it." That word, cameras, stiffened the suits. Their disguise as mere businessmen cracked. The woman's eyes sharpened suddenly. Recognition. "Wait, did you work with Grayline?" Evan's hand stilled around the spoon. That name again. A name from another life. "What the hell is Grayline?" one of the men demanded. "I'm nobody," Evan said evenly. "Just someone who fixes what's broken." But the seed had been planted. The woman knew who he was. And everyone was watching now. "Ravenfield, give us what we came for." The big man growled at the woman. "USB drive. Documents. Now." Her voice shook. "I don't have anything." "Ravenfield files," he pressed. "Don't lie." Evan froze at the name. Ravenfield, the company responsible for Sarah's death. This wasn't random. Evan's voice was low but firm. "Ma'am, what kind of documents?" Her answer was barely a whisper. "Financial records. Safety violations. Payoffs. I'm a journalist." A cold realization settled in his chest. These weren't thugs. They were corporate fixers, sent to silence a reporter. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," the big man said, his grip tightening. "Walk away, repairman. Go fix your pipes. Leave grown-up problems to us." But the dining room had gone silent, the weight of choice pressing on every breath. Even the violins seemed to hesitate. Across the room, Lily pressed her palms against her chest. Their second signal. Stay calm, Daddy. The cracked spoon rolled between Evan's fingers. Fragile, flawed, still useful. Here's what's going to happen. Evan's voice carried, quiet but commanding. The lady is going to walk to the bar. You're going to stay seated. Then we'll wait for police to decide who belongs here. The big man smirked. Police? You called them? Evan pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over the screen. Not yet. He pressed a button. The line clicked. But I'm about to. The man lunged. Everything went sideways. Training that never left. The big man's hand shot toward Evan's throat. Classic intimidation grab. But Evan was already moving. Weight shifted his toes, red thread against his pulse. The cracked spoon slashed the air, edge pressing into the nerve between radius and ulna. A jolt of pain turned the man's arm into dead weight, his hand useless. Gasps. A fork clattered to the floor. The second man lunged for Lynn's purse. Evan snatched a cloth napkin from a nearest table, twisted, looped, and pinned the man's wrist to a chair leg. Improvised restraint, soft but effective. The live stream chat exploded. This guy's a ninja. Is this staged? The third man reached into his jacket. Evan moved faster. A strip of curling receipt paper tore from the terminal. 3 quick motions, and the man's thumb was bound painfully against his index finger. Pain compliance with the gentlest of tools. Sit still, Evan said quietly, or lose the use of that hand. The dining room had transformed into an arena. Dozens of phones pointed, recording every detail. The viewer count ticked upward like a rocket. You're Evan Hale, the woman breathed. From Grayline, the instructor. Murmurs rippled. A diner whispered. Grayline? Diplomatic security. Lynn's journalistic voice cut through. Not just that. He wrote the Calm First Manual, the training for nonviolent resolution in high-risk situations. The room shifted. He wasn't just a repairman. He was something else. Ravenfield exposed. The USB drive appeared in Lynn's hand. This, she said, holding it high, contains proof that Ravenfield bribed inspectors for years. Housing violations, fire code neglect, including the boarding house where his wife died. All eyes turned to Evan. His jaw tightened. The red thread pulsed. Yes, he admitted. Sarah Hale. She died because Ravenfield cut corners. Phones captures every word. Comments flooded. This is bigger than we thought. Corporate murder. Protect this guy at all costs. Sirens wailed in the distance. Police minutes away. You think this ends anything? The big man hissed. You think Ravenfield cares about one dead maintenance worker's wife? Wrong words. The red thread snapped as Evan's fist clenched. For one terrifying second, the cracked spoon gleamed like a blade. The entire restaurant braced for blood. But he opened his hand. The spoon clattered harmlessly to the table. The difference between us, Evan said softly, is that I know when to stop. The fallout. The police stormed in, tasers drawn. 3 restrained men, 1 terrified journalist, 1 comm technician, and 30 diners with phones raised high. This man saved me, and Lynn said firmly, holding up the USB. These men tried to steal evidence for Ravenfield Holdings. He prevented it. The lead officer eyed Evan. Evan Hale? The Grayline instructor? Former instructor, Evan corrected. Current father. From across the room, Lily's clear voice rang out. That's my daddy. Applause erupted. Phone shook. The live stream topped 40 million views in 24 hours. The phrase wrong table, wrong day trended worldwide. Weeks later, the aftermath unraveled like dominoes. Nadia Lynn's expose ran with federal backing. 17 indictments. Executives in handcuffs. The Lamar manager confessed to being bribed. Ravenfield collapsed. The boarding house site where Sarah died was demolished, replaced by a memorial garden. Job offers flooded Evan. Security firms, investigation agencies, diplomatic services. He chose none. Instead, he took consulting contracts part-time, training staff in de-escalation. Flexible hours. Home by 3:30. Always room for Lily's paper cranes. Irony of ironies. His first major client was Law Mer itself. He walked back in weeks later, clipboard in hand, red thread tied fresh, to train staff under a new motto, calm first. The restaurant not only survived but thrived, marketed now as the safest dining room in the city. The crane and the thread. 6 weeks later, on the courthouse steps, Nadia announced the final Ravenfield indictments. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. Evan said nothing. Instead, he untied Lily's red thread and wrapped it around the black USB drive that had toppled giants. Then he placed one of Lily's white paper cranes on top. Red, white, black. Fragile hope perched on hard truth. The photo went global. The image said more than speeches ever could. That night at home, Lily slipped another crane into his pocket. This one folded from the day's newspaper, front page, their photo. "For tomorrow, Daddy," she whispered, "in case you need to fix something else." The red thread glowed faintly against his wrist as he turned off her lamp. Some things in the world broke. Some could be mended. The trick was knowing which required tools and which required courage. Evan Hale fixed both. And when it mattered most, he still knew how to say, "Wrong table, wrong day,